Your inner voice refers to our ability to silently use language to reflect on some feature of our lives. Chatter's the dark side of your inner voice. Why did I do that? I'm such an idiot. You find yourself berating yourself incessantly. And when that happens, I think you encounter one of the great problems of humanity, which is...
Leading psychologist and bestselling author Ethan Kross has spent years studying the inner critic, discovering the dark side of mental chatter and why learning to control it is the key to real peace of mind.
I know the data surrounding the consequences of chatter. And when you look at what it does to us, it sinks us in 3 areas of life that I think most of us care a lot about.
How do we know when it's gone from inner voice to chatter?
Your question is a really important and deep one, Ken, so I want to stay with it a second longer.
So, Ethan, as somebody who's been in the psychology world for a long time, and obviously now 2 really, really successful books, the first thing I wanted to know from you is, what does science tell us about the mind and its relation to the inner voice? So, in other words, where does the inner voice come from? Is it emotion first? Chicken, egg? Talk to us a little bit. I think that context would be helpful to where we're going.
Well, I love that question because, we often talk about the inner voice. I've got a voice in my head. I can't tell you. It's actually something very interesting, Ken. When I started researching chatter, and I'm obviously talking about it to my friends, Chatter being the title of my first book, all of a sudden, the songs that keep on popping up as recommended have the voice in my head in the lyrics. And I'm like, wow, that's a coincidence, huh? It's everywhere. Like, of course, it's probably picking up on what I'm searching for and other kinds of things. But we throw around this concept of, it's that voice in my head, it's nagging, or it's my inner critic, or, I'm talking to myself. But we never really stop and think, like, what is that voice, to your question? So let me break it down super simple. Your inner voice refers to our ability to silently use language to reflect on some feature of our lives. Some people wonder, like, does everyone have an inner voice? Some people say, I never talk to myself. Well, I would push back on that idea that some people don't have an inner voice. If you have language, if you could talk out loud, like, you have the capacity to activate the voice inside your head. And it's an invaluable tool. Like, Ken, let me ask you a question. You ever go grocery shopping?
Yes, many times.
Okay. You ever go and, your partner maybe tells you what to buy and you get there, or you think ahead of time, I have to get something, but you show up and you forget what you're supposed to get.
Mm-hmm.
And you stop and you repeat in your head. You say something to the effect of, like, oh, crap, man, what was I supposed to get? And then you run down the list. You ever do that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's your inner voice.
Right.
Like memorizing a phone number, 2090501. That's your inner voice. We don't do it out loud. We do it internal. Your inner voice is also like, why the hell did I do that?
Yeah.
You are such an idiot. Like, that's your inner voice. You know what else your inner voice is? Your inner voice is also that linguistic capacity to make sense out of your life. It's like, how am I gonna deal with this thorny situation at work? Why did that person say that? And how can I rectify the wrong that I committed and repair the situation? That's your inner voice too. So your inner voice, it's a Swiss Army knife that we all possess. And it can be really powerful, or it can be one of our greatest vulnerabilities. And that's why I wrote the book, to try to help people harness that tool.
Let me ask you something. When was the last time that you spent time thinking about your mattress? I realize most of us don't. Until we wake up sweating or sore or just flat out exhausted. And let's get real. When you're investing in your future, trying to be better, trying to move up, sleep shouldn't be the thing holding you back. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Avocado Green Mattress. Their mattresses are assembled in the USA with certified organic materials. That means 0 chemical junk or petroleum, and they don't skimp on quality. Avocado gives you clean, breathable comfort that helps you sleep deeper and cooler through the night. They've got customizable options for how you like to sleep, firm, medium, or plush. and a simple mattress quiz to help you find that right fit. So whether you're upgrading the guest room or replacing the old one in your bedroom, Avocado gives you luxury that's built to last. With materials you can feel good about bringing into your home, and they back them all up with industry-leading warranties. I want you to head to avocadogreenmattress.com/Ken today for $50 off with the code KEN50. That's avocadogreenmattress.com/Ken and use the code KEN50. Avocado. Dream of better. The example of the grocery store that you used with me, I think we can all relate to that. Is there a difference in the power of that where you are essentially running it through in your mind and you may whisper it to yourself versus maybe you get invited to a social gathering, and this happened to me. This is a real life example just 3 or 4 days ago. I get invited to it and it's all text, and I started walking through, well, if I get into this, do I really have energy for that person? It was one of those things. It felt like I was just being a little bit less aggressive than in the grocery store where I'm going, what is it that I need this, da, 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 da. Is there a difference when we begin to, because I know you talk about how powerful it is to journal and you cite some stuff and we'll get into that, but I just wonder if I'm saying it to myself, does that help me get it out a little bit better than just ruminating?
Yeah, I love this question, Ken. It speaks to the various ways we could use our inner voice in our lives. So when some people say, I don't have an inner voice, they're often referring to one specific way we use it. Some people don't have a back and forth conversation in their head with themselves like you see in the movies. Like, should I do this? I don't know. Maybe I should. Maybe, right? You can use your inner voice for lots of different things. And you're describing one usage, which is oftentimes like when we're in our head trying to work through a problem, there are no guardrails on how we think about our circumstances. We could think super fast and go in lots of different, directions. My guess is there have probably been moments in your life where you've done something that we call catastrophizing, like what if this happens? What if that? And within 13 seconds, you go from a happy individual to like, oh my God. And so when you either write about your problems or you speak about them, what's interesting about those can be interventions, because writing and speaking both impose a structure on your thoughts. They force you to not think in disorganized way, but to think in more organized way. So like, you learn from the time you're a little kid how to write a sentence. A sentence has a beginning, middle, and end. When you talk to someone, there has to be a logical sequence to the statements, right? So, Ken, I have 2 kids. They're great. They live in the house, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying they live in the house. I have 2 kids, washing machine and dryer, right? Like there's an organization when you have to understand me when I'm talking. And so that can often be helpful for allowing us to work through difficult problems. But if we want to be like super duper clear on the functions of your inner voice, how it benefits you, let's just break it down. There are 4 things it lets you do.
Let's do that. Okay,
4 key things.
All right.
So number 1, it's part of our working memory system. Your inner voice lets you keep information active in your head for short periods of time, like when you rehearse a grocery list or repeat a phone number. It also helps you simulate and plan. Ken, we haven't met before, but I'm going to guess that there have been moments in your life where you have gamed out in your head what you're going to say before an important presentation or interview or conversation. Fair enough?
Absolutely. I visualize, I don't know how you do your keynotes, but I highly visualize my keynotes. So I have a very, very loose, I call it loose, but it's just less structure than just my 4 or 5 key points. And then I visualize the talk for days beforehand. It's not a memorization for me, it's visualization. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so I do a combination of visuals. I'm simulating and planning, so I will visualize what the audience looks like. I'll then go over in my head what I'm going to say. So I'll go through my talking points. I'll sometimes imagine what an audience member, what question they're going to ask me, and I'll even practice a response. So there I'm using my inner voice to simulate and plan. Sometimes if I have a really difficult, I know I have to like have a tough conversation with someone, I'll go over what I'm going to say beforehand too. That's another way people often use their inner voice, right? To simulate and plan. We use our inner voice to motivate and control ourselves. So do you ever talk to yourself when you're exercising?
Not out loud, but I do. I do
internal.
talk to myself. Absolutely, I do.
What do you say? What do you say to yourself? I always love finding out what people say.
Yeah. So many times it's like gut it out. I'll say that to myself when I'm doing more sets. So a longer set, and you're getting up to that 20th rep, and you get 16 and it starts to hurt and it's burning. Things like that. I have this way of telling myself, don't quit. Because, at my age, I'm middle-aged, I'm doing this for me. And some days I don't want to finish the full workout. Yeah. And I'll say to myself, don't you dare quit.
Yeah.
Things like that, little thoughts.
So athletes who are skilled at harnessing that voice to motivate themselves, they perform better than athletes who don't, or individuals who activate this voice in a more disparaging way, like, this sucks. Like maybe I should leave and have some breakfast, right? Like that's another direction that your inner voice can take you. But we often use our inner voice to motivate and control ourselves. And then the last function I like to flag for people is we use our inner voice to make meaning out of our lives. When we get thrown curveballs, like, why did this happen? Why did they do that? When we encounter situations that we don't quite understand, there's effectively like an alarm bell that gets pressed in your brain that says, everything stop and let's focus on making sense of the circumstances right now. And we use our inner voice to create those stories that shape our understanding of who we are. So those are all the things your inner voice helps you do. That's why it's an amazing tool. The big problem, of course, is one that will be familiar to every single person who is listening here, is that sometimes we try to activate that voice, but it betrays us. It jams up on us. You start ruminating and worrying about things. I mean, my God, if you could imagine, like, if we could harness the amount of mental energy that the population of the world puts into ruminating and worrying, I mean, we would never need another energy source, right? Like, think about how much, I mean, I'm sure you've gotten stuck in a thought loop at times.
I'm a classic overthinker. So let's just confess this right out of the gate. You can use me as an example all day long. I am naturally very analytical in my thoughts. I'm not an analytical numbers cruncher guy, but I am an overthinker.
It's simply remarkable that being analytical is one of the virtues of the human mind, right? Like, your ability to reflect on circumstances, to learn from them and improve and plan, like, this is what allows us to do remarkable things. But that same tool so easily can become unwieldy in ways that just create massive sources of human suffering.
What happens when what you just described, worry and stress, anxiety, my gosh, begins to break the pure solutions that we just walked through? What's the flip side? What are the things that happen when we allow worry to take over?
So I call the hijacking that occur that you're describing, that is the experience of chatter. The chatter is the dark side of your inner voice, right? You've got a tool, you're trying to use it for all the beautiful purposes that you just described, but it just jams up on you. And you just start spinning over and over or critiquing yourself endlessly. And when that happens, I think you encounter one of the great problems of humanity. It's a problem that has afflicted us as a species, likely for as long as we've been roaming the planet in our present form. Why do I say that? I don't say that to scare people or sell books. I say that because I know the data surrounding the consequences of chatter. And when you look at what it does to us, it sinks us in 3 areas of life that I think most of us care a lot about. Number 1, chatter makes it very hard for us to think and perform. Ken, the last time you were overthinking something, did you have some trouble focusing on things around you? Maybe like, are you good at reading a book when you're stuck ruminating about something or worrying?
No, you'll read that page 3 or 4 times in a row sometimes before you realize. You're so locked in your thought.
Universal experience. Or you may be sitting I've had the experience of sitting at the dinner table with my family, and my girls want nothing more than to tell me about their day, right? It's like a blood sport in my house. Who gets to tell us first what happened, right?
Yeah.
And one of the daughters will start going, and they'll go on, and I'm like, I'm there, I'm nodding, but my mind is somewhere else. And then there's quiet, and I look up, and I'll go to the same daughter who just told me in detail about what happened to them. I'll be like, oh, so what happened today, sweetie? Right? Like, my mind is somewhere else. So what's happening there? Your ability to focus is limited. Our attentional resources, you only have so many of them. Chatter acts like a sponge. It consumes that attention. Doesn't leave a whole lot left over to do the things you want and need to do. So that's one way it undermines our ability to think and perform. It can also lead to what we call paralysis by analysis. You overthink things to the point where you can't take action. Not good either. So that's thinking and performance. We know chatter sinks us in our relationships. A couple of ways this works. One thing that happens is when we experience chatter, we often want to get it out and share it with other people. So you find someone to talk to about it. Maybe it's your partner, maybe it's a friend. And you find them, you start talking, but then you keep talking about it over and over again. And this is such a sad finding, a sad phenomenon. Like, it's someone who genuinely cares about you, but they end up getting sick of hearing the same thing, over and over, right? It's like, we talked about this 17,000 times. Maybe you should talk to someone else about this. So we know that chatter can create friction because people naturally pull away from folks who are just endlessly vocalizing their problems because it starts to bring them down. It can also lead us to take our frustration out on other people. So you're really frustrated that you're in this state, and you take that negativity out on other people. So that's relationships. Now we've got thinking and performance. It sinks us there. It sinks us in our relationships. The last bucket is our health and well-being. I think we probably all can agree that when you feel chatter, it's not a nice place to be. You feel trapped. You're zoomed in on the dark side of life. But what we also know, it can undermine your physical health, because what happens is chatter activates a stress response, and it keeps that stress response churning away over time, right? Because you keep thinking about the stuff that you're worried about or that you're upset about. And that exerts a wear and tear on your body that can be physically damaging and predict things like problems of cardiovascular disease, inflammation, even certain forms of cancer. So thinking and performance, relationships, health and well-being, those are some pretty big territories, and chatter sinks all three.
Hey, I want to tell you about my new sponsor, Delete Me. Here's a fact for you. Your personal data is everywhere on the internet, and I don't just mean your name. I'm talking stuff you don't want out there, like your home address, phone number, names of your kids, and more. And that is all thanks to data broker sites that sell your data. Then it ends up in the hands of online thieves who use it in scams and phishing attacks. And the worst part is, even if you think you've cleaned up your digital footprint, your personal info can pop back up without warning. That's why I'm so excited to recommend Delete Me. They are the industry leader at scrubbing your info from hundreds of data broker sites, and not just once. They do it continuously. Then they send detailed reports showing what they've removed and from where. And if you have a unique situation, they've got specialists that are standing by ready to help. Look, this isn't about being paranoid. This is about being prepared. So don't wait for a phishing scam to catch you off guard. Go to joindeleteme.com/FrontRowSeat today and use the promo code FrontRowSeat for a 20% off discount on an annual plan. That comes out to just $9 a month. That's joindeleteme.com/FrontRowSeat. How do we know clearly, Ethan, when it's gone from inner voice to chatter?
Yeah, if you find yourself turning over the same content over and over. So if you have, let's say your goal is to work through the problem, which is often why we reflect on a negative situation. We want to just resolve it.
Yes.
but you don't find yourself making any progress. That's one sign that you're experiencing chatter. Another big sign is if you find yourself berating yourself incessantly over something you've done, like, God, why did I do that? I'm such an idiot. I can't understand why I did that. So you're stuck in that same place. You're looping. Your question is a really important and deep one, Ken, so I want to stay with it a second longer, because recognizing the difference between unproductive chatter versus productively focusing on negative experiences is really important. I am not a proponent of the belief that we should never experience negative emotions or negative focus on negative things. I don't believe in that because I think, number one, it's not possible. So if you give people the goal to like only be happy, never experience negativity in your life, like you're giving people an impossible goal, number one. Number two, likely not a useful goal, because negative experiences, they help us, right? They help point us in the right direction. So what is a productive way of thinking about negative experience? Imagine sitting down to journal about a problem, right? The way journaling helps people is you take a problem, you start writing about it, and as you write about it, you find that you begin to actually generate new ways of thinking about the circumstance. You come up with plans for how to deal with it. And by the end, you've got a game plan. Right? So now we've war roomed, so to speak, the issue, and we know how we're going to proceed. That's useful. Chatter is very different. Chatter is you get the equivalent of chatter is you get into a room and you just keep on, well, this is the situation. Oh my God, what if this happens? And you go to the worst case scenarios and then you just repeat them over and over in your head.
I'm so
It's
glad
not
you
a fun
said
place to be.
No, and I'm so glad you mentioned the journaling, because in doing some research for this conversation, and I'm pretty sure you cite this, there's a guy by the name of Dr. James W. Pennebaker, if I'm saying that right, and he conducted a study in the 80s that showed that writing about our emotional experiences for 15 to 20 minutes a day, so this would be a discipline or a routine for you routine freaks out there, for just a few days of doing this, could lead to improved immune function, reduce stress and depression, and increase self-awareness. My gosh, if only one of those three was the outcome, that would be worth doing. And I bring that up to ask you, because you know psychology, and I think I've read it somewhere, that it is very powerful for us to get thoughts out of our head and to write them down on paper. If that's incorrect, correct me. But if it is correct, what's happening there psychologically for us to do what Dr. Pennebaker suggests? Why is that so powerful?
It's interesting that this very distinguished scientist, Jamie Pennebaker, I don't know if you caught the fact that Penn is in his last name.
Yeah.
And he has studied writing his whole life. Kind of a coincidence, right?
It is, yeah. It's kind of wild, yeah.
It is wild. So Jamie is a wonderful scientist, and there's hundreds, if not more, papers that support this idea. So journaling, expressive writing is very useful. It is very beneficial. So it is correct. Part of the way that it helps us is, number one, writing expressively. It allows us to step back and reflect on our circumstances from a more, what we call, psychologically distanced perspective. You're like writing a story, and you become the character in that story. It's a lot easier for us to weigh in on the problems of other people than it is to weigh in on our own problems. Like, I'm sure you've had the experience of giving really great advice to your audience and kids, but you're the biggest hypocrite on the planet, right? You don't follow that advice yourself. True?
Oh yeah, it's happened.
Yeah, it's happened. And so that's true for all of us. There's a name for this. It's called Solomon's Paradox, named after the Bible's King Solomon. Wisest guy on the planet, like in history, one of them, but wise when it came to other people's problems, made bad decisions when it came to his own life. So like when I'm writing about myself effectively, like now it's like I'm writing about this other person. It's Ethan and what he's going through. And so that's one way that writing helps. The other thing it does is it structures our thinking, to go back to something I mentioned earlier. When you're stuck in your head, you're pinballing in so many different directions. There are no guardrails. on how you're thinking about your situation, right? 1 second you're thinking about this negative consequence, the next second you're off in this other direction. When you write, that imposes a structure. Like you learn from the time you're a little kid. Stories, they've got a beginning, they have a middle, and they have an end. I want to repeat that last part. They have an end. When you are in chatter, there's no end to that chatter. Like when I do workshops on this, I ask people to think about a time when they've experienced chatter and how long did it last? Some people say they've been stuck experiencing chatter for years about one specific thing. Story's not going to last for a year, right? It's 15 to 20 minutes of writing. So you get to the end. So that's another way that it helps us. Now, there's one really interesting finding about expressive writing. During COVID, we did a bunch of studies where we wanted to see what are the tools that really move the needle on people's chatter, on their COVID anxiety in particular. And so we monitored people across the country. Over the course, we monitored them for like several weeks. And every day we had them rate their anxiety and then tell us what were the tools that you used to manage your COVID chatter. First thing we learned, people didn't use one tool to manage their chatter. On average, people use between 3 and 4 different tools each day. So again, a lot like physical fitness, you don't go to the gym and just bicep curl. You bicep curl, do some ab work, push-ups, throw something else in there. That was true of how they manage their chatter. The most effective tool of the 18 or so that we asked about, expressive writing. That had the highest ROI on, led to the largest decreases on anxiety. However, it was also the least utilized tool. Most effective, least used. Now, why might it be the least used? I think there are 2 reasons. Number one, it's effortful. You've got to actually sit down for 15 minutes to do it. Which, if we think about that for a second, my God, 15 minutes and you could feel better. How much time do we get stuck in chatter? Hours, days. But I think the time commitment's one. The second is there's a real vulnerability that comes with putting your thoughts on paper, because guess what? Now, this dark world that is inside your skull, you are actually creating evidence of the sometimes bizarre, wacky, vulnerable things that you are thinking and feeling. I mean, when I do workshops on this, I will, to give people the experience, I say to people, look, we're going to do an exercise now. It's one of the most valuable tools I can give you. And I'm going to ask you to all try this tool right now. Some of you are not going to want to do it, but I'm going to still force you to do it right now. And I effectively have to bring paper shredders and lighter fluid to make people feel comfortable so that you can, don't worry, no one's going to read this. So just remember that this can really benefit you, but you may be resistant to doing it, but push through that to give it a shot.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Folks, I want to make sure you understand that therapy isn't just for people that are dealing with major traumas. Now, therapy can help with that, but it's just a great tool for anybody that wants to get better so they can unlock their potential to be the best professional, the best person that they can be. I'm going to tell you something. When I engage with my therapist and I get way behind some of the things that I'm dealing with and I understand it, that clarity becomes a superpower for me to lift my head up, move forward to be the best person that I can be. So if you're thinking about trying therapy, I'd love for you to contact BetterHelp. BetterHelp is 100% online, so it's affordable and convenient for your schedule. And as the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. They have over 10 years of experience matching people with the right therapist for them. And check this out. They're rated 4.8 out of 5 on the App Store with over 141,000 reviews. So if you want to get started, just fill out a quick online survey and get matched with a licensed therapist. Then if it's not the right fit, you can switch therapists at any time easily for no extra cost. So Talk it out with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Ken to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Ken. So I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. So I have to start with that. In fact, I've learned a lot from Tony, how he does his interventions, and it shaped me tremendously. And it was several years ago, and me and about 5 other guys, all business guys, decided to go to one of his events. And one of the guys, Ethan, was particularly fired up about the end of the event where you do the fire walk. And if you don't know what the Tony Robbins fire, it's come under controversy. You can go Google it. But it's a thing. It's a mental toughness, focus, and you walk across crazy hot coals. Oprah did it famously. I had seen it, and they were talking about it in the airport. And I remember, Ethan, my first reaction was, I'm not interested in that at all. And I immediately went into, here's all the reasons why. Number one, I tend to be a real life Chevy Chase. And I could see me getting a coal stuck between my toes. This is real thoughts. And it's going to ruin the whole weekend. And for what? I'm mentally tough. Like this, it doesn't appeal to me. The only thing I get out of that is I tell a story, and I was starting to go, that's the positive, all the negatives, blisters on my feet, in between my toes, I fall, I look like an idiot, I have some anxiety about this, and I just made this list. And this was instantly. So the week goes on, and now the pressure starts, and they're like, we're all going to do this, right? And I was just hemming and hawing, and they figured it out. And then the pressure came that night, and I was just torn because I'm such a people pleaser. So number one, I didn't want to be the one guy that didn't do it and be a wimp or whatever, all that macho stuff. But I really didn't want any of those bad things to happen for what I thought was a really low ROI. Again, the over-analytical guy, I'm giving it to you. I look back on it now, and I kind of wish that I had tried it and done it just because I'm older, and I think that would have been a fun thing to do. I could have learned a lot about myself. Talk to me about what I could have done there, because I got all spun up about this.
Well, I guess the question is, in that moment, what could you have done, or right now, because you find yourself thinking about it over and over?
Well, I think in the moment, because I really don't find myself, it's not even what I'd call a major regret, but as I was thinking for a scenario where as I rewind on it, I think that the inner voice took over and it became chatter for me.
In that situation, I mean, I would think I would have coached you to, hey, what advice would you give to your best friend who is going through the same thing right now? Like, what would you tell them? Would you tell them to do the fire walk exercise, or would you tell them to sit this one out? I'd ask you to do that. I would also tell you to call your board of chatter advisors. So who are those? Those are people who are, carefully selected to do 2 things for you. Listen and really empathically learn about your circumstances, but then work with you to get to the bottom of the problem and come up with a solution. So who are the 2 to 4 people in your life that you could have called, like taken 10 minutes one evening, and just run them through what's going on in your head. See if there's some consensus that emerges, right, from doing that kind of exercise. You might also write about it. If usually your board is sufficient at that point, and see what they have to say. I also might tell you to think about how you're going to feel about not doing this 10 years from now. Is it going to be something you really regret, or is it going to be something that you're just totally okay with? That's a form of mental time travel that helps us put in perspective what we're going through. It's interesting you brought up this example, though, because I recently, maybe a little bit less dramatic, I was invited to a retreat up in northern Michigan at the beginning of the spring. And I'm on a conference call, and I get out in the basement. I get out of the conference call, and there are like 6 or 7 guys who say, we're going surfing. I'm like, huh? And like they like give me a wetsuit, and they're like, yeah, we're getting on the boat and we're gonna go wake surfing. And the water temperature at that point is maybe in the upper 40s.
Yeah,
right?
No,
I mean,
thanks.
it is. And like you, I say to myself, not just myself, I say to them, like, nah, I'm good. And every other guy got in the water, and I sat in that boat, and I had my Patagonia down jacket on.
Fantastic. Hopefully a hot beverage.
I clapped them along, and they're shar as they hit the water, and no regrets there. So if you would have called me, I think I would have made you feel better as a chatter advisor in that situation.
Well, I love this. I'm so glad now that I brought it up, because this is really fascinating, because I'm such a believer in surrounding yourself with people that are truth tellers in your life. They're for you, but they won't allow being for you to get in the way of helping you. And I love the chatter advisor. So that leads me to this question. How do we do, I'm guessing the answer is chatter advisors. How do we do venting properly? Because
Chatter
venting,
advisors.
I'm guessing, is good, but then there's probably a diminishing return on venting. Yes?
Yeah, I would say so. Okay, so here's the problem. Let me first address this question of what's the deal with venting, and then we'll talk about how to build your board of chatter advisors.
Love that.
So when we experience strong negative emotions of the sort that characterize chatter, we often do want to express them to other people. And there are lots of reasons why we're motivated to do that. That's a universal. We often want to get it out. The problem is, if all you do is vent about a problem, you feel close and connected initially to the person you're talking to. Like, Ken, you're willing to actually take the time to listen to me and demonstrate that you're on my side, right? Because when I'm venting to you, you're responding, oh man, tell me more. What? They said that SOB.
Yeah.
Man, that stinks, right? So I feel like I have your support. And that's very good for relationships. And so what we know venting does is it strengthens the bonds between people. The problem is, if all you do is vent, you leave that conversation feeling good about the person you just divulged this information to, but you leave that conversation, you're lit up because all you've done is go over what happened to you and what you felt. You never got to the bottom of the problem. So sometimes
Yes.
you're even more upset after that conversation than before. Like, I've had situations where I'm talking to someone about something that really bugs me, and I'm having a good time. There's some it feels good to just tell this friend of mine about the situation. And I leave like, oh, now you just act, and I'm just even more activated.
Right.
And then I got to go do something else. So that's not good. The key to getting good support, and this is also the key to being a good chatter advisor to someone else, is to find someone who lets you do two things. Number one, they do allow you to talk about what you're going through. They've got to learn about your circumstances. And it's important to establish those empathic connections. But after they have a sense of what you've gone through, and after you feel like you've been able to get it out, then they transition. They start working with you to broaden your perspective. They're in an ideal position to do it because the problem isn't happening to them. They've got the objectivity. So step one, listen and learn. Step two, work with the person to help zoom them out, help change their perspective. How do you do that? Lots of ways. Ken, that's awful. What would you tell me if I was in that situation? What would you tell me to do? Or I seem to remember you were on a guide trip 3 years ago, and we were in a similar situation. How did you deal with that circumstance? Right? So there are a lot, or what do you think you should do? So there are lots of ways you can work with the person to help them reframe their situation. That is the key to being a good chatter advisor. You do both of those things. You non-judgmentally listen and learn, and then you get in there with surgical precision to help the person work through the problem and come up with a solution.
So let's flip this for our audience. They're out looking for their chatter advisors.
Yeah.
This is something I'm already processing as you're talking. I've got a really close group of friends, and there are a couple that I go, perfect for this. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what we are looking for, attributes in someone that could be a chatter advisor, is someone who is for us. They care about us, so they're going to empathize and listen. They're not bothered by us. They're really walking through life with us, so they're there. And then the second thing is they're a question asker, not a yes man or yes lady. They're gonna ask questions, and they're gonna try intentionally to give you a prism to look through. Is that what I'm learning?
You got it. These are, like, when I think of the, 3 or 4 chatter advisors I have for work stuff, and then I have maybe 5 or 6 for personal affairs. These are people that, number one, I know we have this like implicit agreement. I call, they pick up.
Yeah.
Right? And they have one interest in mind when I call them, and it is me. It is my welfare, my humanity, right? So I have zero doubt that there's no ulterior motives that they have other than supporting me. That's critical, right? And then they non-judgmentally empathize. Sometimes the chatter we have, it's kind of embarrassing, right? Like, I don't know if I want to reveal my most vulnerable thoughts. Sometimes they can be perceived in the wrong context as a sign of weakness, as a sign of lunacy, maybe, right? So you want to have people.
Let's talk about that for a second, because you're a guy who can speak to this, and I think you've written on this as well. We all can have these crazy psychotic thoughts that come from out of nowhere. At least I've heard it said that it's one thing to have a nutty or crazy or even a violent thought come in your head. It is completely different to allow it to stay there and to process it.
That's right.
Is that true that we have no control over some of the wackiest, craziest thoughts that we'd be absolutely ashamed of admitting?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we all
Where does that come from?
Well, there are lots of theories. We don't have a definitive answer, but one of the leading theories is that your mind is always simulating different possibilities for how things might play out in the world. And it's simulating every possible eventuality, right? Even the super improbable ones, to help you home in on the right prediction for what's going to happen next. But every now and again, one of those improbable or misaligned thoughts may bubble up into awareness. And that's something that we all experience at times. In my second book, Shift, I tell the experience of an intrusive thought I'll sometimes have when I'm working out. When I'm like carrying a dumbbell from one side of the gym to the other, I'll sometimes imagine dropping it on someone's face. And like, this is such a terrible, dark thought, right? And yet,
I know.
Like, why is my brain doing that? Not because I want to harm someone, probably because, that would be really bad. So maybe be mindful of the fact that you could drop a dumbbell on someone's face, so you take precautions not to do it. Squeeze the dumbbell tighter, like take another path. In workshops, I'll often ask people to anonymously report a dark thought they've experienced over the course of the past 2 weeks, a thought that they were ashamed of and wouldn't want to reveal out loud. And it's wild. Everyone.
What does that do for us? Because I'm thinking of intrusive thoughts that I have. That'd be I would just be mortified is the word that comes to my mind.
Yeah, and every other human being on the planet.
So is that a warning to me to go,
No. So the reason I love teaching and writing about this experience, if you experience intrusive thoughts at times, welcome to the human condition, my friend. We all do. Because that is such a private experience, so there's so many people who walk around thinking that there's something wrong with them. So when a dark thought maybe pops up into my head every now and again, before I knew about the science that's part of how our brains work, I'd be like, what's wrong with me? Why would I think that? I'm not someone who harms other people, and yet here I'm having a thought about causing harm or something bad happening to someone else. Like, God, when I have one of those dark thoughts now, it's like, all right, how you doing? See you later. And I move on, right?
That's good. That's good.
And that's liberating. So, of course, there is a distinction between having the thought and acting on the thought. And if you're acting on those dark thoughts, that's a different story. But having those just bubble up, like that's just how we work. Now, that experience of intrusive thoughts is also really important for highlighting for people the facets of their emotional lives that they can versus can't control. Some people don't think they can control their emotions. They can't control their chatter. If you don't think you can control your emotions or your chatter, guess what? You're not going to take any efforts to actually try to do that, right? Like, if I don't think there's anything I can do to lose weight and make my muscles bigger, I'm just using that as an example. I don't actually have that goal. Maybe a little bit bigger, but not
That's
a whole
right.
lot, right? But if I don't have that goal, why would I pay a gym membership and then submit myself to the torturous acts of lifting these heavy weights and running and doing these things, like, if they're not going to actually have any benefit for me? So if you don't think it's possible, you're not going to do it. Here's how this is relevant to intrusive thoughts. The thoughts that pop into our head and the emotions they activate, we don't always have control over when that's going to happen. Like, I can't predict every time I'm going to become anxious or angry. I don't have control over that. I can become triggered in a variety of ways, ranging from, bumping up against someone in the subway who smells funky. It's going to elicit a negative reaction, to someone insulting me. There's going to be an automatic response. I don't have control over that. What I do have control over is how I engage with those emotions and thoughts once they're activated. And that's really the opportunity zone for getting people better and using the tools we're talking about.
Well, you wrote a book called Shift, and it's all about managing your emotions so they don't manage you. My gosh, you should get the Nobel Peace Prize, right?
Yeah.
If you could just go give that to us. So I ask a simplistic question to maybe have a deeper conversation on this. I want everybody that's watching and listening to think of the last time they got really pissed off. I mean, pissed, okay? Could have been your kid, could have been your partner, could have been a coworker, could have been your boss, a customer. And to your point, picking up where you left off, can't really control that emotion initially. It is there, baby, and it is raw. Do we have the ability to shift as quickly as seconds later? If so, how? How can we become so aware and manage what is as you said, you couldn't control how it came at you. It's there, but now managing. Can we as humans change and manage that emotion that quickly?
In many circumstances, yes. There's obviously, the more intense the emotion, the more challenging it sometimes is to downregulate those responses. But there are certain tools that work super fast. Sensory tools, which we often take for granted, sounds, sights, touch, smell, those are very powerful shifters. So, have you ever felt instantly shifted emotionally when you hear a particular song?
Sure.
When
I hear Mr. Brightside, I'm a Michigan fan. The audience knows this. Go. He's a Michigan professor. I hear that song come on Sirius XM in my car, and it takes me to the big house and 112,000 people going bananas singing that song. Sure.
That's right. So music can shift us within seconds. Taste, that's another automatic shifter. You ever just bite into something that tastes wonderful? That's an emotional experience. Boom.
So I need to carry around my favorite candies and pop one in my mouth when I get pissed off? Is that what we're saying?
Well, I think having playlists ready to go to calm you down makes a lot of sense. For some people, scents are really powerful equalizers. Hotels work with scientists to come up with boutique smells to pipe through their ventilation.
Yeah, all-time favorite hotel. I got to tell you this. Best smell ever. Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas.
There you go.
I don't know why.
Well,
I haven't been there in a while.
They could tell you. I'm sure you call them up. So a lot of these hotels sell the scents, so you can pipe them in your ventilation system at home. Diaphragmatic breathing is another one, right? So that elicits a very deep lift breathing in a way that allows you to consume a lot of oxygen. So like a deep yogic kind of breath can elicit the opposite of the stress response, like a calming response. So this is something that lots of first responders are trained to do, right? Like that kind of breathing response can shift our emotions within seconds, calm us down. More than seconds, then, there are other kinds of tools that can be effective. If you can succeed in distracting yourself from a problem, that can be very effective. We often hear that avoidance is really harmful. Don't avoid the things that are bugging you. Well, avoidance in short bursts can actually be quite effective. I would actually encourage folks, the moment they're pissed off in response to an email, don't respond to that email in the moment and try to get to the bottom of why you're feeling a certain way by asking the person. Instead, much better to distract yourself for a couple of hours and come back to the problem later on. That's another kind of tool you can use. So
interesting.
The bigger the emotion, though, I want to be super clear with you and with folks who are listening. Sometimes managing our emotions can be very challenging. It can take, the bigger the problem is, oftentimes the more work it is to rein in that response. That doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you've got to go a little bit deeper into the toolbox. And, the more adept you become at using those tools, the better able you are to more quickly rein in the response. So when I get triggered, because I've practiced these tools so much and I'm so familiar with them, I'm almost never in a position where I'm trying to figure out what to do. I have 4 strategies that I go to immediately. I use distant self-talk. I mental time travel into the future. I mental time travel into the past. And if it's a big problem, I activate the advisory board. Most of the time, that's all I need to do, right? So I can do that quickly, and as a result, curtail the amount of time that I get stuck experiencing that chatter. That's fundamentally the big goal, right? Shortening the amount of time that you spend in that state. And that's where these tools can be helpful. But whether it's a matter of seconds, minutes, or hours, it really depends on the circumstance. It would probably be ridiculous to assume that it would be ridiculous to assume that if you experience a major, major tragedy or trauma, that you could just, boom, in a matter of seconds, be okay with it. So that's what we're talking about here.
Yes. And I'm glad you clarified that. I'm thinking more, for professionals here and then in our personal lives where we've just got some relationship sparks. And if we let those things,
well, let me give you one on that example with my wife. If we love my wife dearly, been together 25 years, and on occasion we'll have a tiff, right? Or maybe more than an occasion, it happens. And the way that I've learned to neutralize very, very fast, if I become angry, is I zoom out. So I use distancing. I zoom out and I think about how much I value this person in my life, despite, her doing something that might repeatedly annoy me, turning the thermostat down, for example. Right now, this is a little pet peeve. We have differences in how we like the baseline temperature in the house. Sounds trivial, but sometimes I'll be in a podcast conversation like this for a while, and I can't just get out of my seat. And all of a sudden, I'll just have the sweat begin to pour because my office gets so hot. That can elicit an anger response. But look, this is the mother of my children who I love spending time with. And that kind of reframe, boom, immediately puts my response in perspective, turns the thermostat, no pun intended, down.
So we've been talking a lot about content from both of your books. And I want the audience to grab this. Chatter, the voice in our head, why it matters and how to harness it, first book. The latest book, Shift, Managing Your Emotions So They Don't Manage You. And prior to us recording, we were talking about the fact, I was like, these books, it feels like they overlay. And you were like, well, interestingly enough, I was on my book tour for Chatter, and the questions that came out from the audiences led to really what is book 2. It's like the second part of it, Shift. I bring that up because I'm thinking of people who want to win professionally, and they're going to do that by becoming better personally. And I'm thinking about how much winning in a professional context, I don't care what industry it is, has to do with the soft skills. And those skills can be covered up, blunted, however you want to use the analogy, when our emotions are messed up. So the context is that. The question is, if we've got chatter going on all the time, isn't it impossible to be emotionally healthy enough to shift?
Yeah, chatter is a major, major problem that can get in the way of us. I mean, when you're experiencing chatter, you are having difficulty regulating your emotions because you're letting your emotions run you, right? And that can steer us in really difficult directions. You mentioned the soft skills of manage your emotions. I think these soft skills are the hardest skills.
Yes.
They're the hardest skills because no one teaches us how to do this. You can, learn how to, master an Excel sheet and create a valuation model for an organization or, master a surgical technique, right? There's classes that we take to teach us how to do that. When was the last time you had a class for a semester on how to manage your emotions? Like most kids, most adults have never had that class.
No.
And what's crazy to me, Ken, is okay, so take my 15-year-old who just finished up freshman year in high school, and we were doing lots of math, geometry together. I think it was geometry. Algebra and geometry. And I'm trying to help her. And it's a little bit, even though I do statistics for a living, some of the high school geometry is a little fuzzy for me. And I'm thinking to myself, it's fuzzy because I never use these skills in my life. Now, I think everyone should learn about math. It's really important. But I also think everyone should learn about their emotions and how to manage them, because I am tasked with having to either manage my own emotions or other people's emotions every single day, whether there's a need to motivate myself or someone else on my team, or downregulate negative emotions or help them do it. Every single day, that is a skill that is called upon. And we just leave it to chance that people are going to succeed in that territory. And we know from oodles and oodles of research that people who are skilled at being able to manage their emotions, they actually do better in life. They excel farther in school and at work. So if you care about thinking and performance, you have to care about managing your emotions. How does that shake out? Well, we talked about it earlier. When you're ruminating about something, you don't have full access to your brain, to your ability to focus. Guess what? You often need to focus to be successful. So whether we're talking about your ability to excel at work, to have high productive relationships, to be healthy, your ability to manage your emotions is central to all of those activities. I think it's one of the most important skills that we should be working on.
Absolutely right. The essence of shifting is what?
So shifting refers to the ability to do one of three things: to turn the volume on your emotions up or down, so to increase or decrease their intensity, or to shorten or lengthen how long you sit in a particular emotional response. How long is that experience going to last? Or in some cases, it means being able to go from experiencing one emotion, say anxiety, to another emotion, say happiness altogether. Shifting is the act of moving your emotions around in those three different ways. And if you are skilled at being able to do that, which the tools I talk about in the book can help you do, you're gonna be a much happier, healthier, and productive individual, right?
And dare I say, stand out too, easily stand out.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is about understanding how to lead yourself more effectively in life encompassing both your personal and professional relationships. It also involves understanding how to lead other people effectively, right? Being able to manage the emotions of the people that you're working with. And so that's what shifting is all about. And it's something we're all capable of learning how to do by familiarizing ourselves with both the traps that sometimes can make shifting hard. How do we avoid those traps? But then also, what are the tools you can use to push your emotions in those directions, in the directions you want to push them towards?
Well, friends, so much that I've taken away today. I've been writing notes furiously, but one specific takeaway that I'm going to put into practice, and to be honest with you, I already started a couple days ago as I prepared for this conversation. I got a head start, but I'm going to challenge you to do this, and that is this, that the person we listen to the most is us. And I have to remind myself that I am the person that I listen to the most, and that inner voice that we've been talking about, Ethan and I, the goal here is not to suppress it. The goal is not to feel shame from it, two things that I've been guilty of, but to teach it to be a wiser voice, a healthier voice, a friendlier voice to me and to others as well. So you do what you want with that, but I'm going to be thinking about what I'm thinking and really practicing. Again, the two books, I highly recommend them. I think they go hand in hand. Chatter's the first one, Shift the second one. Ethan, I'm a fan. Really loved our conversation. I know our audience is going to enjoy this as well. So thank you for pouring into me and our audience.
Well, thanks. It's been an absolute delight to be with you. And I can't tell you how much and I'm sure your audience appreciates your authenticity and vulnerability. So you made it a delight.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.